Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today, Masechtas Menachot daf Vav. We are going to begin on the top of Vav Amud Aleph, about 8 or 10 lines from the top. El Omer of Ashi. So we were learning when it comes to a treifa, the din is, of course, you cannot be makar of that as a carbon. And the Gemara said that the reason why it cannot be done is because of a pasuk. It says min habakar, and therefore that's coming to exclude a treifa. And on this, the Gemara said it doesn't make sense. Why do you need a pasuk? L'chayr, you have a kavachaymer, the madach by a balmum, an animal which already has a blemish. The din is, of course, that you could shecht it for yourself. However, it's also gavoya. So a treifa, which you can't shecht even for yourself, it's not kosher. So then certainly it should be also gavoya. So the question is, why then do you need a pasuk? And the Gemara ended up saying, as we saw, that perhaps there's a tzad shava that we could learn out from Malika as well as from Chel Vadam, that through the tzad shava the din should be that it's asul gavoya but mutul head. It's from Fakert. It's asul head but mutul gavoya. So maybe also treifa should be the same thing. So no. But the comparable things of those sadashavas is, as we saw numerous times, this is the way it's supposed to be done. That the chalev and the dam, it's supposed to be done in this way, that is the matir. And also when it comes to the malika, that is the way that you prepare the oath. However, when it comes to a treifa, no one would even have a havim to think that you have to bring a treifa. So therefore, you can't learn this out. Therefore, you need a pasuk. So really, the whole point is you could learn out what was the pircha is actually on the original kavachimer, which we just stated. That we can say lamal balmum shachin asabo makrivin ki karivin. That when it comes to a balmum, that not only is an issue for the animal not to have a balmum, but also the kohen who does the avoda too cannot have a balmum. So this is an unusual thing, as Rashi says. The mum posel b'kohen kamo b'zevach of a treifus lo posel b'kohanim. If let's say a kohen is a treifa, he's still allowed to do the avoda. Only he can't do the avoda if he's a balmum. But if he's a treifa, he's still allowed to do it. The eluk sherim b'adam b'sulin b'behema oisav as b'noi treifa v'yoytze doifen. So we see that treifa, a kohen, is allowed taka to do the to do the kahuna. Also, yoytze doifen. It's an interesting thing that when it comes to a carbon, you can't bring such a carbon. However, a kohen could do the avoda even though his mother had a cesarean. So you would think maybe Yoytze Daifin would not be able to do the avoda. No, it's not true. A Yoytze Daifin is allowed to. Okay. So anyway, because of that, that's the reason why we need a pasuk to tell us to exclude treif. So Armulei Rav Acha Sabu Rav Ashi. So Yoytze Daifin Yoichiach. When it comes to the case of an animal which is Yoytze Daifin, Shalosabo Makrivin Kamakrivin, as we said, that we do not compare the animal in which we a Yoytze Daifin you can't bring as a carbon, but the kohen who was a Yoytze Daifin himself from his mother, cesarean section, is allowed to be a kohen. Umatu hedyet, and it's mutar hedyet, v'asul gavaya. It's asul gavaya. So maybe we can learn out that just like by the case of a Yoytze Daifin, that we do not compare the two, and none the kohen to the individual, unlike the balmum. So fine, we won't learn out from balmum. We can learn out instead a kal v'chaymer from Yoytze Daifin. No mal Yoytze Daifin shechein enu kodesh b'b'chayra. So you can't learn out from Yoytze Daifin because it's not kodesh. It's enu kodesh b'b'chayra. So look in Rashi. The Peter Rechem Ksiv. It says the first issuance. So therefore, when it comes to Yoytze Daifin, it's only an animal that comes out through Peter Rechem. Taimer b'treifa shekadusha b'b'chayra. That it does take upon itself kedusha b'chayr. Im noilad im treifasai hilcha chitzrach kra. So we see when it comes to Yotzei Daifen, it's different in as opposed to when it comes to that we don't say it's Petarechem. However, when it comes to a Treifa, we still say it's a Bechor. So Bal Mum Yechiach. So again, Bal Mum can prove you Shekadish b'Bechayra that it is Kaidish. The Asl Gavaya Afani Avi Treifa. Again, Lamli Kra. So yeah, Mal Bal Mum Shechein Asabo Makrivin Kamakrivin. So again, you can't learn out from the Baal Mum because the Baal Mum not only is the Zevach cannot have a Mum, but also the Kayin. So Yotzei Daifen Yochiach. That's not the reason why we should say this distinction between Hedjit and Gavaya, because we see that when it comes to Yotzei Daifen, even though the carbon can't be brought, but a Kohen can be a Yotzei Daifen, B'chazar Din, or a Zechari Zev, or a Zechari Zeh. The two common denominators that each quality that each one has is not like the other one, which is obviously the reason why the din of it being mutal gavaya, asur gavaya, mutal hedjit, is only is for some other reason, right? So the fact that mutal hedjit and asur gavaya is not because that it's comparable, the zevach, to the person, and it's not totally on whether it would be a bechor. So what's the common denominator between Baal Mum and Yotzei Daifen? Shumutar lehedjed v'asur legvaya. So v'kol shekain treifa, she'asur lehedjed t'asur legvaya. So again, you don't need a pasuk. So when it comes to these things, there's never a heter. They're never allowed otherwise. However, when it comes to a carbon, which is a treifa, there are certain times that we say it is acceptable. Okay. So, what are you talking about? Where do we ever find that? Treifa is not good. So what do you mean that there's sometimes it could be brought? So what the question you can say is, while we say that the malika, like you're cutting the spinal column while you're performing the avoda of the malika, right? You're actually cutting the spinal column, which makes it into a treifa before it's killed. And nonetheless, we allow, therefore, when it comes to an oila, that by doing malika, the animal dies, becomes a treifa. The animal becomes a treifa before it dies for a split second. And nonetheless, we see that it's allowed, even though it's a treifa. So maybe that's the case, because we see it's actually hutu machola when it comes to the malika. And it's dafka by an oila sa'oif, because we cut both simanim. So Baal Mum nami b'oifos ishturi. Baal Mum nami b'oifos ishturi. Tomos v'zachros b'mehema din tomos v'zachros b'oifos. So well, let's not make this mistake. The whole issue of a Baal Mum is dafka by a behema carbon. However, by an oif, the whole issue is dafka if it is mechusar aver. However, if it's not mechusar aver, it's not missing a limb, and it's a Baal Mum, you could be makriv such an animal. El malika the chatas oifel kohanim. So when it comes to the malika of the chatas oif, given over to the kohanim. So kohanim is shulchan gavoy kozachu. So we know that kohanim, when they're eating it actually as a gift from the table of Hashem, so to speak. Look at Rashi. Ubal mum v'yatza daifan lo ishkachach hetel kohanim. So maybe we're more lenient when it comes to treifa. So he said, "Meshulchan gavo kazachu v'gabi gavo ashkachan babal mum ba'oifais heter mechal iser v'leika malatzad v'lamli kra." So again, we're back to our question. It's because it's just meshulchan gavo kazachu. So the el parchachi malatzad hashem shebehem shechein mumen nicker tomer b'treifa shechein ein mumen nicker mishum hachi it's derech kra. So this is actually the point. By Yotzei Daifen, everyone sees how this animal came out in a not abnormal way. And also, people can see if this animal has an outside blemish. Mashenkin, when it comes to a treifa, that's something which is typically an internal organ that maybe is punctured, the lungs or whatnot, and therefore, because it's not nicker, so maybe a treifa is allowed to be brought. That's why we need the pasuk. The treifa mahacha nafka mahaskim nafka. I thought we learned from a different pasuk. It says mamashki Yisrael mina mutter Yisrael. It has to be something which is mutter for Yisrael, not a treifa. Mikol asher yaver tachas hashevet. When a pasuk, we learn out from this pasuk that anything comes from under the stick, nafka, prat l'treifa she'eno oiveres. That's something which can't walk. So when it comes to doing the meiser behema, it has to be an animal that is able to go naturally on its own. If it's not able to walk, so that's a treifa, and therefore it's not included. So why do you need 3 psukim? The answer is sricha. Maybe the only time we say that a treifa is not allowed is an animal that was born that way. It never had a shasa kosher. Let's say it originally was a kosher animal, it was a fine animal, then later on it developed becoming a treifa. Ema tiskasher, because of Rachmana kol asher yavor. And Metzias says it can't walk. We don't care that it was able to walk. We look at it, but Metzias now, if it can't walk now, it's a treif and it doesn't work. Because maybe it first became a treifa, and then you want to be makdashit. That doesn't work. That doesn't work. Let's say first you were makdashit, and only afterwards it became a treifa. The time you were makdashit, it was actually fit. It was not a treifa. So therefore, you need all these 3 psukim to teach us these 3 different cases, which is what question 9 asks. Gimel Mikroy saying my treiful gavoyim. Mashki Yisrael kol asher yaver tachas haven min bakar madu israch kulhu. So if it said Mashki Yisrael, you would think only if it didn't have a shasa kosher. From the second pasuk, you would think dafka if it became treifa and then you're a makdashit. Min bakar tells you even if you're a makdashit and then it became a treifa, then also that is a problem. And this is also identical to question TA 15. So let's just take a quick look at it. Just read the question. Isigmar Gimel Mikrois, Madua Tzarech Gimel Psukim. Okay, it's a pretty clean, simple answer. It's the same as question 9. So we'll mark over here TA 15. And perhaps question TB 18. Rav Zar Shekamatz Yakser. Okay, we'll see that soon by the next Mishnah. Okay, let's see the next Mishnah. So we finally, not too bad. Sometimes it takes a long time to get to the second Mishnah. Here it starts right in Daf Vav. So whether you're dealing with the Minchas Chayte, or for that matter, Ve'echad Kol Menachos, any mincha offering should come on that the avoda was done by the following individuals who are not supposed to be doing the avoda, and all of this is discussed in great length in Masechtas Zvachim and Daf Tesvav from various psukim, that all of these people, the avoda is going to be puzzle. So let's go through this list. A zar, a non-kayin, an oinain, someone who is in the state of aninus, whose relative died, a tvul yoim, someone who is waiting for erev shemesh, but they're still tameh, or mechusar bigadim, which is comparable, as we said, to someone who's like a zar. A kohen without the proper garments, without the big tikkun, is like a zar. Mechusar kippurim, if he has not brought the carbon on the 8th day. Shorachas out of Araglov, didn't do the proper washings. Oral, Rashi says, a kohen oral. Shemesu achamachmas mila. It's not just stam. He doesn't want to do a bris milah. He's going to die because he already has brothers that died, so he doesn't have to do the milah, but he can no longer. He cannot be a kohen to do the avoda. Someone who is tameh, a yoshev. You're supposed to be standing as opposed to lamoy the shares to serve, and you're sitting. That's not okay. Or for that matter, even if you're oimed, but you're oimed al gabi kelim, al gabi hema, al gabi ragli chaveroi, puzzle. So all these different things, it's an issue of chatzitza. You can't have anything which separating between you and the floor. Okay. Now it talks about kamatz b'smoil. let's say you did the kmitza with your left hand, and so it says pasul. And the Gemara is going to discuss why it's pasul. Okay, it's supposed to be done with your right hand, but why does it have to be? However, Ben Becerra Omer Yakser v'Yakser must be a min. So you can actually put it back into a kli, and he actually argues on not just this case of the left hand, but also with regard to the zar and the oinin and all the other ones. Rashi says v'chol chanach. So all you need to do is just put it back into the kli and then redo it, and redo it with your right hand. Okay, we'll discuss that soon. Let's say you did kmitza, and in your hand is a rock. So therefore, it turns out that the place where there was a rock, there should have been flour, and therefore it's missing the proper amount, or gerger melech, or some salt, or koiret shilavina, a piece of frankincense, pasul. It has to be the amount that fits into your hand, and therefore if you have some foreign substance, then that will pasul, because that was instead of the flour that should have been there. The ezu heter shikamsu mibachutz v'chaser shikamsu b'rosh etzba oisav. Okay, so let's get this down. So if, let's say, a person does kmitza, it's mibaititz, and it's like overflowing, it's gadush, there's a lot of flowing, or it's missing b'rosh etzba oisav, only with the fingertips. Says Rashi, ma'at shel pashtu al pas kol hayad. So in that situation, if it's a little bit of overflow, too much, or just only the fingertips is missing, so then that also will not be an issue, but Gemara is going to discuss this. So, why does it have to mention singling out the minchas chayte and then all menachos? We know that the minchas chayte is among all menachos. So listening kol menachos, she comes to Zarba. So Rav Shimon Istruch, we need it for Rav Shimon. Desanya Omer Rav Shimon bedinhu shnei minchas chayte teuna shemen lavaina. The truth is, a minchas chayte shetaka require oil and frankincense. Shlei chayte nisker, because why should his mincha be skimpy and he can not have to spend more money on it? Okay, fine, we don't want to beautify it, but at the same time, it seems like we're making it more affordable for him. So why not? Because we don't want the carbon to be muhudr. We don't want it to be nice. And therefore, he did something not nice. So why should the mincha be nice? So even though it's true, he's saving a couple pennies, but at the end of the day, it's better that he should save a few pennies, and it looks like that the chayt is nisker, but the Mitzvah says we don't want him to do something which is beautifying, because we don't want the person who is a balavera to look like he's doing something in a glorified manner. The truth is that a chatas chaylev, which is another term for just a stam chatas, that even though it's true that it does not require libations, perhaps it should, as we continue to Vav Amid Beis. Why? Again, because why should we have the chayta, a person who did something wrong, benefit from not having to bring nesachim? Again, we don't want it to be overly beautified. So we don't want it to be nice. So kikam sulap suanami tiskasher. So maybe also when it comes to those karbanos of a chatas, because we don't want it to be done in a beautiful manner, so therefore maybe we should just say that if a apostle does it, then it should be kosher, because it doesn't have to be in the most beautiful manner anyway. So Kamash Shmuel, Hachi Hasem Nami Lisni Echad Chatas Chaylev Echad Koil Hazvachim. So why does it have to say the language of our Mishnah? It says Minchas Chayte. Let it instead just say Stam. It should say Chatas Chaylev Echad Kol Hazvachim. All karbanos shekibul dam and zarva oinin. V'leima Rav Shimon itzrach, and we'll say, okay, we need it for Rav Shimon. Alma, what do we see? Kivan detani le koil v'loy katani chutz kulu mashma. It's including everything. So achanami kivan detani koil v'loy katani chutz kulu mashma. So why do we mention again, minchas chayte. So it's achsakla mina hoyel v'kim d'loration of Rav Shimon. Since on Daf Beis Amud Aleph, we established that our Mishnah is not like the sheet of Rav Shimon. What are you talking about? So, wasn't that long ago. I hope you guys didn't forget. Okay, so Rav Shimon goes against our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says that when it comes to a mincha, if you did a kimitza shol shema, it's kosher, but it's not oil l'shem chayva. So on this, the Gemara said that our Mishnah is not like Rav Shimon, who said kol menacha shikmitza shol shema kisherois v'ol l'bal l'shem chayva. So our first Mishnah was clearly not like the shita of Rav Shimon, because he was lenient when it came to a mincha which was done shlo l'shema. So since that's the case, that's not like to look Rav Shimon, so say v'nami to look Rav Shimon. So maybe we think our Mishnah is also not like the shita of Rav Shimon either. Kamashwan. So Amar Rav Zar shekamatz. So he said a non-kohen does kimitza yaksar, and go back and do it again. Obviously a kohen. I have a non-posel tanan, but I thought it says it's posel. No, by posel and shiyaksar. Just do it again. Yahachi hainu ben beseira. It sounds like the same thing as what ben beseira said in our Mishnah. Just do it again. Now id the isa lo kaimitz be'ene lo pligi. Rabban allowed. You're right. The ben beseira. The truth is that if everything is still exactly the same way, it's still here, so then everyone's going to agree, just put it back into the klisharis and that's it. Kipli the chaser kaimitz. The question is, let's say some of it's missing. So Rabbanan Savilo Yavi Mitayich Beisav Yamulenu, that it's too late because you're missing some of it. The kaimitz is not here anymore, got lost or something. So then you can't redo it because it's and you can't redo it and put new flour to fill up that void. You could take more, take more flour to complete it, and that would be okay. Okay, so that's the machlokas. So if that's true, the machlokas is not when it's still there that everyone holds just redo it. Machlokas if there's not enough, and you can just replenish it. As Rashi says, "Soyosli sound the ksavi kedushas kli kavel l'shem mincha d'shuv im moisifin aleha v'yiv solena b'chisanin." So according to the Rabbanan, it says no, you can't. Once it's already missing, it's missing. It says mina mincha, which is prat l'shechasra, can't be missing. However, according to Ben Beseira, says no, the kamitza is what's koiveyet, and it wasn't. You don't have the kamitza anymore. It's lost. You can redo it. You can add a little bit more. Yahachim Ben Beseira oimer yakser. It says you should go and redo it again with your right hand. You should add the words that you should take the flour from your house, because it's only talking about a case where it's missing. Now Kika Imarav Leben Beseira. That's what it should say. Kika Imarav Leben Beseira. So he says that when he was saying this whole statement, it was only in accordance to Ben Beseira. Okay. Now pshita zmada tema ad kan loika masha ben beseira el b'smoil. Maybe the only time Ben Beseira was talking about of all that things on the list is only if you did it with the left hand, then you could redo and do it in your right hand. Avol b'sharp sul mo kamashmon. So you would have thought, for some reason, we're going to ask why, that maybe Ben Beseira's heter of redoing it is dafka when it comes to from the left hand to the right hand, but all the other ones you can't do. So maishna smoil. Why would we think that there's a kula dafka by doing the avodah in the left hand that you could be redone with the right hand? Because we find we know in Yom Kippur, when it comes to doing the avodah, bringing the ketaitis, so with one hand you have the coals, and with one hand you have the spices. So you're doing an avodah with your left hand. So therefore, since the avodah sometimes can be done on the left hand, also bringing the carbon. Okay, that's it. So zarnami yashachan lo hechshir b'shchita. Well, 1 second. You could also say that by the other avodah, because a non-kohen could do shchita. No, well, shchita will have a voidi. That's not approved. Veloi, is that true? And this is Gemara elsewhere in Yuma and elsewhere. Is it true that shchita is not part of the avodah? V'yom rav zera marav shchita's para. When it comes to the shchita of the par, which is the par duma, so bizarre psula. Interestingly enough, a non-kohen cannot do it because it must be because it's part of the avodah. Because it says the word chayk, and therefore because of that, it's not allowed. So which is kind of an interesting twist, But when it comes to Paraduma, the reason why Shechita is possible by a Zar is not because it's an Avoda, because over here, actually, the Paraduma has the status of Kedushas Bedek Abayis. And therefore, it's not Shaykh to consider Avoda, and it's just a Gzerza Kasav that a Zar is possible to do it. And therefore, you can't learn out from there. So, however, when it comes to the left hand, you would maybe think there's a difference. V'lav kol dechenu understands a koshkein that kodshi bedek abayis bo kahuna, so kodshim is bechel boy kahuna. Of course it should. The Ramashish b'ridu Rav Idi midi dehavi amoros negoyim the lav avoidin in hu boy kahuna. We know when it comes to the seeing of the saras that it has to be evaluated dafka by a kohen, and that's it. A kohen is the only one who could do it, even though it's not a voda, but nonetheless that's their responsibility. So too, when it comes to the paraduma, that's just a responsibility that when it comes to the paraduma, there's a gzersa kasav that a kohen has to do the shechita. But again, maybe that's the distinction that maybe you would have had a havamina to think that's only by the left that you could redo to the right, but not in the other things. V'neilef mi bama. Why don't we learn out from a bama? What does that mean? So can Rashi. Kohen b'derav lamali mashna smoyel demachsher ben beseira. B'chazara the east bay hechsher b'yom kippurim. Okay, fine, because there sometimes you can use the left hand on Yom Kippur. The kohen gadol does. Zar nami anayadana the machsher nabi ben beseira. We should know that he should redo it also by a non-kohen. The eastley hechsher b'bama. Koidim shnis kadish aharon she'avoid b'b'chayris. That we know that even before the Mishkan. So at Har Sinai, the original plan, which is brought down at the very end of Zvachim, which we had recently, that a non-kohen was allowed to do the avoda, right? Maybe you can't learn out a drosha from a bama because they just it's before Matan Torah and everything. Okay, of course there were times that a bama was mutter, but we're talking about a time when the bechor, the firstborns, who were non-kohanim, were the ones that were going to do the avoda. When it comes to a carbon that left the proper place, for example, an oil that went chutz l'kilayim outside of the azara, now that becomes puzzle. However, if it did go up on the mizbeach, the din is yard. We don't take it down. Shari yaitzi kosher b'bama, because it's kosher by a bama. Now this is of course shtickle mudna, as the Gemara elsewhere says, because obviously there's no din yaitze by a bama because it's outside anyway. There's no dinim of a bama. It doesn't have curtains. And even if it does, there's no din yaitze. That there's no iser yaitze. But nonetheless, we see this. So Tana Azais Taidas Oila Samachle. So we learn out from this pasuk that Zais Taras Oila, that this is the stam, this is the din when it comes to an oila. Elatayim and Yashmin and Rav Halav Hachi have a mean of a sharp sul and pasul ben Beseira. Otherwise, you would think again maybe Ben Beseira would not allow you to redo it. Vastan you have Yosi, Rabbi Huda, Rav Elazar, Rabbi Shimon Oimrim, Masha Haya ben Beseira bechol psul and kulan. We know, of course, that's not the case because he actually allows you to do this regarding all the psulim in our Mishnah. Vatanya. And we learned furthermore, the kamatz misham mimakum shragle hazar oimdais. So, when a person does the kemitza, right, the kohanim do the kemitza, so it says from there, which is mashma, from the place that the ragle hazar oimdim sham, which is the place where ragle Yisrael are able to walk, which is the 11 amos, and that's it. And it comes to tell us the lo be'inan kemitza b'safain. It's just telling you a chiddush that you do not need to actually do the kemitza in the north, just like all other kachik kadashim. Rather, anywhere in the azara, kemitza is allowed to be performed. That's what that's coming to tell you. Memokum shragli hazar oimdais. Ben besera oimer menayin shim kamatz b'smoil shiasav yaser yikamas miyamin. Tama v'kamatz misham. Mimakum shekamatz kvar. So you could go back to the same place where you did the kemitza. You could redo it. Kivan dekra stomach sibah. It's just written generally mali smol mali sharp sulin. Doesn't specify the problem. So therefore, it's not just that you did it with your left hand. It could be that the kamitz was done by any psul, like our Mishnah said, and it can be redone. Okay. El hakamashmalon rav that kamatz v'afil kiddush. The chiddush is that when it comes to kamitza, you can even if you did kamitza and your mekadesh the flour already by putting it into the kli, that you, as Rashi says, kamitz b'matan kli machshir ben beseira, because otherwise you would maybe think it's only if you did the kamitza but you were not yet makdish it by putting it into a kli. L'fuki mahani tanoi desani Rabbi Yosi ben Yosi ben Yoisian, Rabbi Yehuda Hanachtoim Amru. The Medamar Morim that you could redo it is only Shekamatz Lo Kiddush. You didn't actually put it into the Kli yet. Then you could redo it. Of a Kiddush possible. Once you already put into a Kli, it's too late. So the Kiddush is that even though you put into a Kli, you're already Makadosh, it can still redo. The Ikadi Amri, some say it a little bit differently. Kamatz in Kiddush Loi. That if once it's already in the Kli, that's too late. Come on, Kehani Tanai. Lafuki Matana Kama. It's going to exclude the Tana before. Okay. Maybe it's a good place to stop. Let's check a couple lines out. Maskav Rav Nachman. Maiko Sari Hai Tanoi. Okay, let's actually stop there. Okay. All right. Let's look at some questions. There's a lot of questions here. Question 8. So what was the pircha? So he said that when it okay, we said that already. So what was the pircha? So when it comes to the shad shamash that they're nicker, but treifa, which is inside, it's not nicker. Question 9. So we had this already. The 3 mikrois. I should have done question 8 before. The 3 mikrois is come to tell you it's even if it never had a shasa kaisher, it was always a treifa, or before you ever makdish it before it became a treifa, or vice versa. Okay. Question 10. Ksiba mincha v'avia el B'nei Aharon Kohanim, that's brought becomes misham, from there, which almost sounds like they're going back to where they were. So what do we went out from here? So according to the Tanakama, Mamakav Shragli Hazar Oimdois, the place where the a Yisrael is allowed to stand, which is the 11 Amos, which basically means anywhere in the Azara, which means that you do not need Safoin, or as on Chesam and Beis is going to say, Dulboy Karen Duroimus Moravis. It doesn't need to be on the southwestern corner. And Rabbi Yosef and Rivav says, Mamachan Shekamas Kvar, Shim Kamas Besuv Yasa Kaimet. So it means that you can go and Misham back to that same location. TA 16. Him Mekanshin Mincha Kaimetz Bekli Shal Gabi Karka. We didn't do that. Question TB 18. Amarav Zar Shekamatz Yasa B'Moikom B'Gemar Keben Beseira. My Kamashmon Rav Lamaskana. I think we'll see that tomorrow. Adkan.